All right, let's see if I can get this going this time. That was very strange. I came back.
What's up, man?
What's up? I took the phone call. It was nothing serious. It was literally nothing serious. It was my son saying that he wanted to say that he sees me on this screen, which would have been cute to have on the air. So I was trying to put this back live for us, and when I came back to my screen, my software that I use here decided it wanted to just turn off. And it turned off the entire stream. So we're live once again. I'm hoping that everyone can hear us. I'm hoping that everything is okay. I did hear you say every time I go to the home screen, it mutes us. And that's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be a home screen so that people can just sit there and wait until we're ready to go. I didn't know that you couldn't hear me, though. That's pretty strange. But long story short, we're back at it again, guys. The reason why I took the phone call was my son calling me. He said he saw me on TV and he missed me. He's 5 years old. So hi, Isaiah. I see that you're watching. Thank you for watching me. But Rylan, before I let you go and before we lost touch there, I was bringing up the idea of a SGA deal. And the deal I had in place, again, I'm going to bring up the tweet. I'll read it verbatim. I said, rumors of this Kings having a deal with OKC to move up is interesting. However, I have a feeling that if a deal gets done, it won't be for the number 2 pick. It will be for SGA. Kings are in a win-now mode. They need to get younger. They need proven talent to take them to the next level. That tweet blew up in a big way. People calling me crazy and saying that, it can never work. So here's the deal for you, Rylan. I'm hoping you can see this here. The deal will be Richaun Holmes, Davion Mitchell, the number 4 pick in the draft, a 2024 first-round pick, as well as a top 5 protected 2026 round pick. To make the money work, we did a sign-and-trade deal that would also include Jeremy Lamb for 3 years at $59 million with a team option in year 2, and the Kings get SGA. Is there a plan in your head that this trade makes sense to you? Because in my mind, you're getting 4 first-round picks since Davion's going in to his second year, right? You get 4 first-round picks. You get a nice starting center away from who you guys had last year, Jerome Robinson and the other Darius Baisley and those young guys. And now you get Richaun Holmes, good contract, nice player, fits a mold there. Your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, I think that with this deal, you do get Davion Mitchell, who, if you can develop him, he can be kind of a Lou Dort player, which might allow you to trade Lou Dort in the last year of his deal, or even sign him and then wait out the 60 days or whatever, and then trade him, and then even get even more assets from that. Also, those protections probably will not come into play because Shai has a 5-year contract that starts next year with no opt-out. So as long as he's in Sacramento, as long as he's playing with Fox and Sabonis, if you guys re-sign Sabonis after these next years, they won't be in the top 10, obviously. I'm not sure that the Thunder are looking to trade Shai this season, though, this offseason at all, but that package is better than the package of, just pick 4 for Shai. That package would be kind of bad. And this includes pick 4, right, this year?
This includes the number 4 pick. Yep, includes the number 4 pick, the 2024 first-round pick, unprotected, and then in 2026 it's top 5 protected, and you also get Davion Mitchell. So I consider Davion Mitchell to still be a first-round pick since he's just going into a sophomore year, and especially since I would even consider him a top 7 pick, which is exactly what he was of how his first year played out and the promise that he brought toward the end of the season. So I say you get 4 first-round picks as well as Richaun Holmes under a really good contract and a starting center for you right away, and then Jeremy Lamb. It gives you a nice wing player if just in case Poku still is a project for you guys over there.
Yeah, so they'd have to execute this after the draft, so the Kings would be picking whoever, technically on draft day for the Thunder, and then they'd execute it after the draft because of the sign-and-trade factor of it. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting. I mean, then your core would be Chet, Giddey, Ivy, Mitchell, plus even more historic draft capital. I mean, you'd then replenish, that's 4 first-round picks or 3. You'd replenish all 3 of your first-round picks that you use this year, and then you'd also get, Davion Mitchell in the process, and then a nice center who does have some baggage a little bit, which isn't typically the Thunder mold. But it would be a good trade package for Shai if they were looking to trade Shai. I just don't think that they are looking to trade Shai right now.
And why is that? Do you think that the OKC and their mindset, because from an outsider perspective, I'm not in OKC. I get to talk to a few people like yourself that cover this team closely. But in my mind, you guys are still on that cusp of being in a play-in potentially, like possibly playing for the play-in. I think the Kings shown that they could have been there. They were 2 games out of being in the play-in this past season with way more upside than I think that they should have had, but it didn't get there, right? I still feel like OKC is a nice step back. So acquiring young talent that are still in the early 20s, 19, 20 years old, as well as having those future assets, and not just any future assets and picks, it's Kings picks, which in most NBA minds, it's the most valuable picks you can have. It's like gold. The Kings have never shown to be anything more than what they have been over the last 15 years. So I feel like in my mind that's a Godfather offer for Shai. And if you guys are not in the mindset of winning games this season or next season, then it should be okay to be moved. Because I mean, a starting lineup. This is the starting lineup in my mind if this deal was to take place. Okay, Rylan, it would be Josh Giddey, Jaden Ivey, Lou Dort, Chet, and Rashawn Holmes as your starting 5. Or you can even go Darius Bazley and Chet, and then off your bench you have Davion, Holmes, Lamb, and Poku, or however other players you want to get. Not even considering that you guys will still have second-round picks there. Like, I feel like you still stay as talented as you are now with giving up a 5-year under contract player. But why is it you don't believe that the Thunder would trade away Shai right now?
Yeah, I think that you have him locked in 5 years, no opt-outs, and if you believe you can compete in year 3 of that contract, then you should keep around Shai, who can be an all-star caliber guy, because you're searching for Shai. You're hoping one of these picks becomes Shai, and I do think again this is a good package for the Thunder if they wanted to trade Shai. I just will say though, yes, it's funny to make the Kings jokes, but to me it's laundry, and there's just not a feasible way, barring injury, that any coach or any GM or any city could ruin a team around Shai, Sabonis, Fox. Like, there's just, there's not really a pathway to that not being good, or at least not being at the very best for the Thunder, pick 12, right? So I just see that being a really good team that is going to be in the playoffs. And again, maybe some years they make the play-in and then get bounced in the play-in because the West is so tough if the West is healthy. And also, even trading in the pick 2 swap, right? If we're just swapping picks 2 and 4 without Shai included, even throwing in the 2023 top 3 protected pick, that kind of loses its luster unless the Thunder are just truly infatuated with Jaden Ivey, because the whole goal of 2023 will be Victor Wembanyama. And again, I don't think that the Kings will be in that race for Victor Wembanyama next year. They're going to sell out no matter if it's Shai or if it's somebody else to just be in the play-in, be in the playoffs, and kind of reset or restart their franchise back up to a winning culture and a winning organization. So the trades aspect for Shai, I think, is as simple as what I always say about the NBA, is that it's a drama TV show, and you don't have to go looking for drama. Drama's going to find you at some point in the NBA, and to this point, SGA has been fully on board with OKC. He's been fully happy in OKC. His exit interview, he was laughing, joking with us. He was talking about how he's very excited every time he talks to Sam Presti about what the goals of this franchise are, and that he can't tell us what the plans are, but he knows the plans. He's very excited, and they always talk to him every step of the way. So until you get him disgruntled and you still have him under control for 5 years, I wouldn't move him. Now, if you do draft Jaden Ivey this year, and then it's just clear Jaden Ivey, Josh Giddey, and Shai aren't going to work together, then Shai, of course, has the most value to trade and the less years of control to trade. Toward this time next year, maybe you're talking about a Shai trade. But right now, I just don't really see them making a big move like that.
It's just too much turnover right now when you're starting to really get these nice, young, talented players. So I guess I can see it in that way as well. And like you said, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're a very interesting team. I find them to be one of the more interesting teams in the NBA just because of how they like to rebuild, how Sam Presti sticks to his game plan. He never really wavers from it, and you have to applaud him for that because it has brought in the talents of a Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, and Serge Ibaka, and it's found him to make big trades to land Shai and Chris Paul. So you guys have continued to stay relevant over there in OKC because of what he's been able to do and sticking to that game plan, so I applaud him for that. what's the word out there? What are you sensing from the team in terms of them feeling confident in one of these top three guys, opposed to the infatuation rumors of them being, really enamored with Jaden Ivey and his potential? Do you still believe that they're more leaning toward picking one of these top three prospects, the consensus top three picks, or do you think there's more of the growing belief that, yeah, Jaden Ivey is the guy that they want and a deal is probably going to happen?
Yeah, I think they got to give credit to Sam Presti and also the ownership group for letting Sam Presti do whatever he wants. I mean, the Thunder could have easily panicked whenever Kevin Durant left for Golden State and just done a ridiculously bad trade that summer out of spite or out of just panic or fear of being a franchise that's going to go downhill. Instead, they stuck with Russ. They allowed him to win the MVP, obviously, and get triple doubles and everything else. And then the next offseason, they shocked the world and they went and got Paul George on draft night. For Victor Oladipo and Sabonis, and then they went ahead and tried to build around that. They convinced Carmelo Anthony to waive his no-trade clause and come to OKC. That didn't really work, but still, that was a step in the right direction of saying, we're not going to go anywhere just because one guy leaves our organization. We're not going to be a terrible franchise now that one guy left. Even though it was a really big and an important guy, we're not going to be a terrible franchise now. And then, of course, in this current day, you have an ownership group that's going to let you tank, it's going to let you rebuild, it's going to let you play, Poku 40 minutes a night and just not care about winning for the betterment of the franchise, and it's resulted in you getting, in this case, in this draft, you have picks 2, 12, 30, and 34. And not to mention a historic draft assets and historic draft capital in the future still, even with these picks. So Sam Presti deserves a ton of credit for finding the basketball side of things, but Clay Bennett and the ownership group deserve a ton of credit for just letting Sam Presti operate and not forcing him to go for the play-in. Because last year's team, this year's team, more so this year's team, if you draft a pick 2, 12, 30 this year, you can have a good enough team to be in the play-in hunt. Now, in the Western Conference, you might get bounced in the play-in, or you might just come up a game or two short. But the fact that the Thunder aren't feeling any pressure from their ownership group to even try to do that is a big deal for the Thunder to put themselves in a better position next year, especially in a draft class that has not only Victor Wembanyama, but a very deep class at the top as well. But for the Thunder this year, I think that you're going to see a team that's more competitive. As far as the number 2 overall pick, if I had to bet, I think that it would be one of the top 3 guys. I think that it's very telling that Jabari Smith's agency and Jabari Smith both let out yesterday that he's only working out for the Thunder and Magic. That's it. And so it kind of feels as though they've gotten some sort of assurance he's going to go number 1, and if not number 1, number 2, because if not, why wouldn't you work out with Houston? That was just going to be bad business at that point. And especially, why would you say that if you don't believe you're going to go number 1 or 2? Because, you're in a spot where you're really coached up if you're Jabari Smith. He's been coached up on how to handle the media. This is his first time really in front of the media since the Combine and since, the lottery and everything else. And that's his first statements of, I'm only working out with 2 teams. That's pretty bold if you don't have assurance some way, somehow, that you're going to go top 2 and not even build a foundation with Houston at pick 3. So that leads me to believe that they're going to go with the top 3. Paulo was in town the other day. I don't really buy into workouts being a big indicator because you're going to try to work out everybody and try to talk to everybody in the draft. But if I had to bet money right now, I'd bet they'd go with the top 3. I think that they're in a situation where some way, somehow it's come up that they like Ivy, and the context has been lost. They like Ivy. They do. He's a really good player, but not at pick 2, right? And that's where the trade down stuff starts. Whenever you like a prospect, it's just kind of a situation where if they were at pick 4, they'd like Chet, but they can't get him at 4, so they're going to have to go and like Ivy, for example. So I think that they really think that Ivy would be a really good player, and if he lands in Sacramento, that's awesome. But I still think if I had to bet money today that they'd walk away with one of Chet, Jabari, or Paulo over Ivy.
Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder joins the Kings Court podcast here on its 3rd stream today. I apologize. I see you guys are finally falling back in to the chat there. You guys that are joining the chat, thank you all so much for following stream to stream, jump to jump. Ecamm decided it wanted to crap out on this last one. If you haven't done so already, guys, help us with this video. Hit that like button and continue to hit that subscribe button. This show is brought to you by RateCrushers.com. We're having Rylan on here to continue to discuss this chatter that is being brought up between the Thunder and the Kings potentially having a deal to move there at number 2. And yeah, you brought up Jabari Smith, Rylan, and I find his whole entire story to be interesting of how he's taking this pre-draft workout right? Because like you said, he said he's only working out for these two teams, and he said that after only working out for the Magic in that presser. What I found and I took away from that was not only did he say he only worked out for two teams, he didn't even talk to Orlando until he got to that workout. He said the only people that he is talking to since the lottery has been announced was the Thunder. And I don't know how much stake you want to have in that, but I feel like there is this. I guess it's being underlooked or not being looked at enough. Like it's being devalued at the thought that Chet could be going number one to the Magic. And again, this growing story for me is the fact that Jalen Suggs, last year's first round pick for the Magic, and Chet have this very close connection. They won 3 high school title championships together. The year that Chet announced that he was going to Gonzaga, Jalen flew to his home to be there for announcement day, to be there in Gonzaga, and I feel like Orlando needs to build a culture, and from there you get a nice young. They like length, they like shooters, they get that as well as building that camaraderie between him and Jalen. Do you think Chet being number one is not being talked about enough, or do you think it's locked in as Jabari being that number one pick?
Yeah, I think it's not being talked about enough. I think that it's still up in the air right now in terms of nothing's a for sure thing. I do think that if they were to pick Chet, it'd be because Chet's a really good player and not necessarily because he has a good relationship with Jalen Suggs. I think that if Shai had a best friend in the draft, right, maybe that best friend goes a bit higher than he should to OKC because it's Shai's best friend and you want to keep Shai happy. I don't think that Suggs has reached that status in his career at all. And I think that, again, it might be a disservice to say that because Chet's a good player. And Chet, if he goes number one, deserves to be number one no matter who's on the team or no matter who he's friends with. Same thing with Jabari Smith and I'm blanking his name.
Chet?
Cheke. No. Same with Jabari Smith. He has a friend on the Orlando Magic team. I'm blanking on his name. He went to Auburn as well. Chike, I can't remember his name. But anyway, just because you're a friend of the team won't necessarily warrant you being drafted first. And I think that if they get drafted first, it's because there's talent and their skill sets, both of those guys. I do think, though, that the Magic could very well go Chet on draft night. And as far as the combine goes, everyone has to remember that, these top guys, Chet, Jabari, Paolo, everybody, they just do measurements and then they pull out and leave. Like, they don't do the scrimmages. They don't do any other stuff. They just do their measurements, get measured on their wingspan, height, all that good stuff, and then they leave. So if you're not prepared or if you don't, and you don't know where you're going to pick until, the day before, setting up these interviews is going to be very hard before they get out of town and go and work on their own. So the Thunder happened to get in there with Jabari. Magic will talk to somebody else, I'm sure, and then they just flip-flopped at the workout. I don't think it's as big of a deal for a case like this year where, you can have a guy in your facility. You can bring a guy in a COVID year, like last year, Josh Giddey, for example, he had commitments with Team Australia for the Olympics and everything. So he actually went to the combine for one day and did all this stuff in one day. He talked with multiple teams in one day. He did his measurements in one day, and then he flew right back to Australia for Olympic stuff with the Boomers. And then the Thunder flew him into Vegas like 3 days before the draft and had a workout with him. And that was their only form of contact with him before the draft in terms of a workout. They worked out with him in Vegas, and then they drafted him a couple days later at the actual NBA draft. So he had commitments where he couldn't even talk to most teams in that case. He mentioned how he never even went to a facility last year. So in this day and age now, we're coming out of COVID and we don't have any Olympics and stuff like that. It is easier to talk to guys to where if you missed them at the combine, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I think that it was an eye-popping whoa, as in only the Thunder talked to you at the combine. I think that was more so the case of the Magic were busy and Jabari was busy, and then they knew that they'd have a workout together eventually in Orlando, more so than the Magic didn't want Jabari Smith Jr. at the time, right? So I think that Chet could very well go number one. I think that could be a realistic option if you look at the history of the Magic and the history of their GM. They love lengthy players. He was in Milwaukee. What did Milwaukee like? Lengthy players. He was in Toronto. What did Toronto like? These same Chet lengthy guys. Now he's in Orlando taking Mo Bamba and Jonathan Isaac and guys like that. So I think that he very much fits the mold of both OKC and Orlando to where it wouldn't surprise me to see him go to either destination. I think if Chet does go number one, though, that should pique your ears up a little bit. If we're starting to hear more smoke about Chet number one between now and the draft, which now the smoke will start to heat up, especially as we get bored in between finals games with these 2 days off here coming up this weekend. And next week, the finals will probably be in some way decided next week. Obviously, either Boston's going to be up a couple games or whatever. As we get to turn the focus more to the draft for the big insiders like Woj and Shams and everything, if you start to hear more smoke around Chet to Orlando, then the whole maybe the Thunder will trade back thing, I think, comes more real. I still would bet that they take Jabari or Paulo, but if Chet's off the board, I think they'll start entertaining more of the Ivy stuff than they have to this point. But that's just all speculation.
Yeah, see, for me, I'm with you on that though, because if Chet goes number one, I feel like that opens the way for the Kings to want to go get their guy. Because in my mind, there's a lot of rumors going around that Chet is the person that they have high interest on, but with it doesn't really meet the mindset of what continues to be spoken about with the Kings, which is they're in a win now mode. They definitely want to try and compete for the play-in or play-offs next year. It's time to start building around this young core that they've built with Fox and Sabonis and whoever in Barnes. I mean, not even really young anymore, right? They're in their mid-20s, so in NBA years, they're pushing it, right? They got to add dog years to it. So I don't know if Chet really fits that bill. Where you look at a guy like Jabari Smith, if he's there at number two, the Kings' biggest needs are defense and three-point shooting. And he brings all of that. And on top of that, the connection with his dad formerly being a player for the Sacramento Kings back in the day, I think would draw a lot of interest from Kings fans that have that historic mindset to it. I mean, I had Brian West on here from the Kings Herald saying that he'll go buy his dad's jersey that day if it happens, And I think that's where the deal comes in mind, because with OKC, I think it makes sense for the Thunder to go after a guy like Chet. I think Chet would be the guy for them at number two that fits the bill, can be the starting center, could also play the four next to Roby or even Robinson. I like both of those young centers, but both haven't shown enough polish to say that they're ready to take over the starting mantle yet. And you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's how I took away from their last season. So you bring in a guy like Chet who can put the ball on the floor. They've also shown that they like projects. I feel like that is a good fit for the Thunder, where the Kings, like I said, they kind of need someone that can come in and right away be effective, and I think Jabari can do that. That's where I feel the deal can happen, is if Chet goes number one. And I don't know. I just don't know if the Magic are willing to do that yet. And this narrative lately has been Jabari number one, and I feel like that's just being talked about a little too much. Would you agree? Uh-oh, we lost you. We lost Rylan Stiles. He will be back on. Screen is black. We will hear from him in just a moment. But yeah, let's see here. Oh, I think we got the computer up. I think that's what it is. Let me see if I can pop him up on the screen here. Go like this, like that. Rylan, are you there? Can you hear me? No, I cannot hear you. Your mic's off.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. There we go.
Okay, gotcha.
Perfect. You know what? Your audio is even more clear now. I think moving into the computer definitely turned the switch. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
right.
awesome. You hear? Let's say you heard this whole little thing that I went on, right? Do you think that you're in that same mindset where Chet going number one opens the door to way more trades happening?
Yeah, I think that Chet going number one does open the door. I think that what you said was what I agree with. I've been saying, if you could create some war model for basketball like they have in baseball, wins above replacement, kind of who will make the biggest impact on winning basketball games this year as a rookie, I think it'll be Jabari Smith Jr. I think that he will win you more games than any other rookie in this class this season. And so if you're the Kings and you're sitting at 4 and you can't really find a proven NBA veteran that is worthy of the 4th overall pick, that's going to be very hard to do. Who is an NBA-ready guy who that team would trade just for 4th overall pick straight up? There's not a lot of guys out there. So if you're the Kings and you're in win now mode and you're lucky enough to get 4, but that's kind of messed you up in terms of trading for an NBA proven veteran, what's the next best thing? To me, the next best thing is Jabari Smith Jr. So then do the Kings, go for that trade and even sweeten the pot to the Thunder's point of view, to where if the Thunder are going to play hardball and say, well, we like Jabari too, he's only worked out for us in Orlando. what are you gonna do about it? Like we like Ivy, but we really like Jabari Smith Jr. This, I think, would be worth it for the Kings to just sweeten the pot from whatever it is now to even more to go up and get Jabari Smith Jr. because I don't know if there's a better option out there to utilize that fourth pick as it relates to winning this season. And if you're the Kings, you only have 2 years with Sabonis where you have to win right now. I think that Chet's too much of a long ways away. I think that Chet will be a very good player, and I'd be very happy if he's in Sacramento or in OKC. But I think that he's a couple years away from truly being the polished version of himself. I think that Paolo would take a learning curve a bit to play alongside a guy like Fox who has the ball in his hands a ton, or Shai who has the ball in his hands a ton. It'd be a little bit of a learning curve. I think that Jabari Smith Jr. just kind of fits right in. He's my number one guy on my board, especially for OKC because of how Josh Giddey's playmaking sets him up for three, how SGA's drive and kicks sets him up for three. I really love Jabari Smith Jr. And so if the Thunder do truly love Ivy and the Kings love Jabari Smith Jr., both teams can get their guy, and the Thunder can out-leverage even another pick or whatever the case is in that deal. That might be worth exploring if Chet's off the board. So if Chet is going to start getting more rumors to Orlando, then things are going to start to pick up with a lot more interest in this trade or a lot more eyeballs on this trade.
You don't think Paolo is an option for you guys at number 2?
I think he's an option. I think that he's my number 3 on my board. I think he's an option for sure, though. He was in OKC on Thursday. I think that he is a really good player, and I think that he's a player that will eventually help you win games. I think that he's a player that's going to develop greatly over his career as a scorer. I think he's the best scorer of the top 3 guys that are being talked about. I do worry a ton about his defense, which could always come around. I mean, there was worries about Jason Tatum's defense as well, and we see how that's working out for Boston in this draft. But I really like Paolo. I think that this is a draft where it goes 4 deep, including Ivy. So I think that if you get any of these top 4 guys, you should feel very, very happy with your scenario. After those 4 guys, I start to get worried, although I still like guys. I still like Shaedon Sharpe. I still like Keegan Murray. There's a lot of question marks around those guys, conversely from the top 4, who I think all 4 guys will be really good NBA players. Now, history tells us that somebody or multiple people are going to bust out of that top 4. But as of right now, I feel really good about this top 4 group of Chet, Jabari, Paolo, and Jaden Ivey being in the top 3 core of a championship level team for your organization.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's pretty bold. I don't have Ivy as a right away like championship gonna be there. I think he has the potential to be an impact player right away, but I don't know if it'll be like championship habits just because we haven't seen him be able to switch gears yet. That makes me a little concerned. Obviously, that's going to be something that he can develop into. Obviously, he also has no mid-range game. We didn't get to see a lot of that there in college, and hopefully his three-point shot can improve and translate over to the next level. That's another big concern for me that I have with Jaden Ivey. I think Keegan Murray is a more well-rounded player right now than Ivy is. That three-point shooting, I think, is just a beauty to see. I think he has one of the nicest jump shots in the NBA draft right now. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Paolo, for me, Paolo is the best player in this draft. Like I've been up front about that a lot. I think in terms of just a big board, it should go Paolo 1, Jabari 2, probably like in terms of just straight talent, Keegan 3, and then Chet 4, just because of the unpolishedness still there, and then Ivy 5. Like that would be my 5 in a big board right now, and I know a lot of people are going to give me hate for that, for putting Chet so low, but I do feel Chet being, 15 pounds lighter than an Evan Mobley was coming out of the draft. He's going to need to put on size. The question mark, his lateral quickness also isn't there, so let's say you put him at the 4 spot. That question mark for me of, can he even guard like a Jay Crowder? Could he guard a Ben Simmons? Those types of the 4s that he's going to have to guard, and we haven't seen enough lateral quickness for him to be there. And could he guard a Jonathan Kuminga? A B-Elite? I mean, he could probably guard B-Elites. A B-Elite's so slow. But I'm just trying to go off these like championship caliber teams, and then you look at Al Horford or Grant Williams. Those big bodies down there are going to hurt when he starts bumping into him. So that's why I have Chet projected a little bit lower, but I do agree with you 100% that the top 4, from Ivy all the way up to Chet or Jabari, whoever you view as that number 1, are clear. But I do think Paolo is being overlooked in those top 2 spots, where there was multiple times this season, Rylan, that Paolo was that number one guy, and I don't know where it kind of fell off. Do you know where Paolo's status just took a drop to where he's 3? That and we just know it.
I said the same thing this week on Locked On Thunder. I think that it's fascinating how uh, it's just kind of he's forgotten about. It's just like, yeah, is it going to be Cheddar Jabari at 1, Cheddar Jabari at 2, and then okay, Paulo, go to Houston. Whatever happens in Houston, whatever happens, who cares? It's just go to Houston. No one cares. Like it's weird to me to see kind of the dismissive nature of Paulo. I think that he's a really good player. I think that if the Thunder drafted him, I'd be very excited. I mean, he'd be one of the top scorers on the team because you look at how the Thunder are constructed. Shai's the scorer. Giddey's the facilitator that can't score. Lou Dort is hanging around shooting threes, and then who else is going to be that go get it, go get a bucket guy? Because it can't only be Shai. Shai's fantastic, but that's going to be a hard life for Shai, especially for a guy who lives at the rim, if he's the only bucket getter on your team. Is as of right now in his career, Josh Giddey can't go get you a bucket. He can go help you. He can go facilitate you a bucket. He can go set somebody up in a position to get a bucket and set up a wide open shot, which in a way is bucket getting. But he can't go score the buckets for you. And I think that Paulo Banchero can do that more than Chet Holmgren, certainly. And then for Jabari Smith Jr., his bucket getting comes from just his size of shooting over somebody in the mid-range or getting wide open threes and knocking down to 40% clip. So I really like Paulo's offensive nature to his game. I think that even like with Houston, how does he play with Şengün? And if that's the case, are you just kind of gonna dump Şengün not off your roster, but off your developmental plan? Because I don't think that those two guys can ever play together. And you just traded 2 first-round picks for Şengün last draft to get him. And I don't think those guys can ever play together, in my opinion, because of the defense. Unless both of them take a huge step up defensively, you can't kind of have them as your power forward center combination. Even though they'd be really good offensively, they also don't complement each other offensively, and they don't play defense, either one of them. So that'd be a big concern for me in Houston. But other than that, he passes everything with flying colors. He passes OKC with flying colors besides the whole Seattle ties, which, that's kind of overblown a bit. If you're getting paid millions of dollars, you're going to go play for OKC and you're going to love OKC until your contract's over. So I think that that's fine. And then Chet Holmgren, again, I think he's a really good rim protector. I think that he has some defensive stuff over Paolo Banchero. But offensively, I'd rather have Paolo Banchero right now. I think that Chet's ball handling and playmaking is great. His shooting is great. And, of course, his shooting from three is better than Paolo's percentage-wise. But I think that as a pure offensive weapon, long-term, Paolo becomes a lot better in that area in the half-court set for me. So I really like Paolo Banchero as well. I think that the Thunder will take one of those 3 guys in this draft. But I think that the only player ready to win meaningful games next year is Jabari Smith Jr., but my comment about someone being in the top 3 of your core for a championship is looking for more so down the line. I think that Jabari Smith Jr., though, could win meaningful games for you next year, kind of like a Desmond Bane did for Memphis. He's a guy that I think can guard really 1 through 5 in the NBA. Jabari Smith, of course, you can't guard Jokic or Embiid, but nobody can guard Jokic or Embiid. I think that his three-point shooting and his defense will really translate to the NBA, and his non-demand for the ball will be a big deal. I mean, just imagine Fox kicking out to him or Sabonis working out of the paint to kick it out to him in the corner. He's going to really thrive with really anything he gets put on. I think that he'll be ready to go from day one. So I like Jabari Smith a lot.
Yeah, me too. Rylan Stiles, Locked On Thunder, joins the Kings Court. We have a comment section that says, please leave Ivy for the Pacers. Pacers pick, 6? I don't think he drops that low. Even if the Kings selected Keegan Murray, say, or even Shaedon Sharpe. The only way I think Ivy falls is if they take Shaedon Sharpe at 4, because at 5, the Pacers still might even take Ivy there, like that. I just don't see how Ivy drops to the 6 at the Pacers there, Tyrone. Do you think there's any way that Ivy could drop that low?
Yeah, it seems like the Pacers like Keegan Murray from everything that we're hearing pre-draft, but if you have to pick between Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey, I'd go Jaden Ivey. And you have to remember, too, Troy Weaver from the school of Presti and learned everything he knows about being a GM from Presti. Now, of course, Weaver has an excellent basketball mind without Presti, but learned the business of building a roster from Sam Presti. He was Sam Presti's right-hand man and made a lot of decisions for and with Sam Presti in OKC. He did not get enough credit for what he did to build the Thunder roster and the Thunder kind of generation of basketball that he was a part of. If Sam Presti likes Jaden Ivey, there's a good chance that Troy Weaver also likes Jaden Ivey because they kind of see the game the same way. It's how Sam Presti, who is one of the most secretive GMs in the sport and one of the most tight-lipped guys in the sport, it's why he trusted Troy Weaver for all those years to know every little detail and know every philosophy that Sam Presti has. So if Sam Presti likes a guy, there's a good chance Troy Weaver also does like the guy as well. So I just don't think that he'll slip past Detroit. But the smoke around Detroit and Keegan Murray seems real to me.
The Thunder still have 2 more picks in the first round at 12 and 30, and I feel like, on this show at least, we haven't given that enough attention than I think we should, just because, I was in the beginning when the Kings were projected to get 7. Like, I was initially high on Benedict Mathurin, and then the more I did a deep dive on him, and then speaking with Rafael Barlow here on this show recently, I've kind of fallen off the hype train for Benedict Mathurin. But at 12, and we can even go to 30 here as well, because I don't know if you probably just have a short list there at that spot. But at 12, still being in the lottery, who are some guys that you are hoping is still around, or who you think the Thunder are eyeballing here at that spot?
Yeah, I think that 12 is a very interesting pick, because I think that right now, a couple weeks away from the draft, there's a lot of speculation of like, oh my gosh, they're going to trade the pick, they're going to trade up, because why wouldn't they? Well, everyone right now is seemingly rising. You've heard Dyson Daniels rising. You've heard Johnny Davis rising. You've heard AJ Griffin rising. You've heard Jalen Duren rising. They can't all rise, right? Jeremy Sohan's rising. Somebody has to be available at 12. And so the Thunder really like Jeremy Sohan. They should like, AJ Griffin, Dyson Daniel, Jalen Duren. They should have a keen eye, of course, for even a Shaedon Sharpe. So, somebody has to fall. If Malachi Branham's going to leap into the top 12, if Jeremy Sohan's going to be the top 12, that they all can't be there and be taken away by 12. So I think that some talented player will fall to the 12. For me, I would love to see AJ Griffin, Shaedon Sharpe, Johnny Davis, Jalen Duren, those kind of guys fall to 12 if I was OKC. I wouldn't necessarily just panic and trade up, because I think that you're going to get a very good player in the draft, because if anybody shocks us, which that there's always draft day surprises, if anybody shocks us, then you're going to have a really talented player fall into your lap at pick 12. And I do think that there's some concern about Shaedon Sharpe slipping to 12, because you look at it and he's not going to go top 4. That doesn't seem as likely as it once did. Detroit really likes Keegan Murray. Is Rick Carlisle going to take a shot on Shaedon Sharpe? I find that hard to believe that Rick Carlisle will bring in a high school guy that has this entire camp around him, that it hasn't played competitively in a year and a half or whatever it is. I find that hard to believe. Is Portland going to take a chance on Shaedon Sharpe whenever they're in win now mode and wanting to surround Dame with talent that can help them win this season? I don't think so. New Orleans is a place where I think that they can afford to take the shot. I think that New Orleans has a 10-man rotation that they will feel comfortable with deploying in the playoffs right now today, that even if they added nobody this offseason, they'd feel comfortable with their 10 guys if they're healthy. So then that makes a lot of sense to then take a shot at 8 on a guy who could be a superstar, but also could be a non-factor for the first couple of years of his career. He doesn't seem like a San Antonio guy. Shaedon Sharpe doesn't. Washington, again, you want win now talent with Bradley Beal, but I could see Washington taking him. And then you've got New York at 11, I think should take him. And then OKC at 12, who should take him. So if you're OKC and Sharpe falls to 9, 10, 11, 8, somewhere in that range, you can easily trade up then for Shaedon Sharpe. But other than that, the rest of the players are pretty redundant in the sense of how high their ceiling can go and how low their floor is, to where you just kind of let whoever falls fall to 12. And for me, I think that the Thunder love Jeremy Sohan. I love AJ Griffin. I like Johnny Davis. I like Jalen Duren. So if any of those guys fall, it'd be great news for OKC.
Yeah, for me, I like Tari Eason. I think he'd be a good pick there at number 12. I feel like he's on the brisk of being like 15 through 12. Like he can just be in that little range. And I feel like, if you need another wing, there he could be. I don't know if that's obviously where you're I think you just find another good role player there at that spot. And if you go down to 30, you're hoping, you're kind of just taking a shot in the dark there. I think any one of those guys at that point are just trying to continue to be on the roster and make a name for themselves on the G League team, and then get that call up if necessary, or if proven. Looking at the Thunder as a whole now, Rylan, let's say they go on, they draft your guy Jabari at number 2, or even Chet. What do you think are going to be some of the biggest needs for them this offseason to address heading into the new year? Because if you're telling me, and look, I got the Basketball Zone, Leo Bias here on the chat saying the stream looks great, no buffering. He says, trade me SGA. But if you guys aren't looking to trade SGA like you told me at the top of the show, What is it that you think that the Thunder need to do this offseason to start being a competitive team and being a playing competitive team next year?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Thunder are going to go for the play-in next year. I think that what's interesting is the Box and One had a report that they've heard that the Thunder want to package 30 and 34 for a veteran, which to me would go against everything that the Thunder have been messaging to their fans and to the media about tanking next year. If you add a veteran to this team that is worth pick 30 and 34, and we know that Sam Presti rarely, if ever, has the bad end of a deal in terms of value. So if you package pick 30 and 34 and get a veteran player, it's likely going to be down low because that's kind of where you need help. You need help at center, you have a power forward. You just need a big body down low, no matter if you draft Chet or not. You need a big body down low. If you trade those picks away for a veteran guy, then you fill out a roster that has a really nice balance of role players and high upside potential guys at the top, to where it's going to be hard to lose if you do that. I'm not going to question Box and One's reporting. I'm just saying that kind of go against what we're hearing. I think that the Thunder are in a position where they are lucky enough to not be forced into anything. The Kings, it feels like they're forced to go for the playoffs. Even if they think that the best move would be to tank and to get Victor Wembanyama, or put themselves in position to try to get Victor Wembanyama and surround Fox with Wembanyama and the rest of the core, Davion Mitchell, it feels like the ownership and the team is not going to allow that to happen. And their GM's in the last year of his deal, and I just don't think that you'd want to risk that in your last year. So the Kings don't have the leverage of flexibility. I think that the Thunder do, of like, if they want to go for it and they want to trade 30 and 34 for a veteran and then trade a couple future first round picks for somebody else on the free agency market, or do a sign and trade for Ayton or whatever the case is, if they want to do that, they technically could, but it just doesn't sound like they do. It just doesn't seem like they do. I think that next year they'll roll with these draft picks into the regular season. They'll play fun, exciting basketball all the way up until the All-Star break, and then they'll slowly start to sit guys, and they'll do what teams like the Pacers did at the end of the year. I mean, the Pacers, the Blazers, they all went 0 for 10 at the end of the year and increased their odds from borderline play-in teams to bottom 10 teams in the league. So that's kind of, I think, that the demo. I don't think it'll be as egregious as it has been in these last couple of years, but I do think that at the end of the year, you're going to see a long losing streak rattled off, and hopefully get the Thunder in a bottom 5 position to go and get Victor Wembanyama if possible. Or again, that draft class is so deep that there are guys outside of Victor who you do want on your roster to complete a rebuild. I think that for the Thunder's case, young teams typically do not win. So even if you tried your very hardest, a team built around 4 rookies or 3 rookies, if you don't want to count the first round picks, will be hard pressed to win no matter how good they are. You just have to learn the NBA and learn through the growing pains of the NBA. So I think that next year's team looks a lot of fun and a lot of exciting talent. And then they pull off what seems to be their mission. Their mission seems to be next year is a year of rebuilding and tanking and kind of growing with your young team. And then in 2023, you have an absolute clean cap sheet. They are not paying anyone in 2023 outside of SGA. Everybody else is on a rookie contract because the Kemba Walker money falls off. He's owed $27.4 million this year. Kyle Singler money falls off. He's still owed $1 million this year. In 2023, the cap space is totally wide open. Everyone's on a rookie deal besides Shai's $32.9 million. They have a new CBA in place. Remember, the CBA last year, the last time around, is what allowed Kevin Durant to go to Golden State. So, they'll know all the rules. They'll know what to anticipate for. They'll know the loopholes and the language and new contracts that are going to come from the new CBA to help better prepare themselves against whatever small market issues arise in the new CBA. So they'll have the new CBA. They'll have a clean cap sheet. They'll have historic draft capital. And hopefully they'll have 3 guys looking for a very successful sophomore season coming up, plus SGA, plus Josh Giddey on this roster, to where then in 2023, you kind of go for it. You make a big trade, a big splash trade. You try to make a big splash signing. You try to do something to bolster the current roster and try to compete. I think that 2023 is going to be their year. And next year is just kind of a sit back and watch what happens and see how good these young guys are.
You don't think that, how do I put this? You don't think that there's a window, maybe even this season, with the development and next step that I think a lot of people are expecting to see from Giddey? At least I am. I think we saw nice moments from Giddey last season. I think it was a little bit of a disappointing rookie year in terms of I didn't get to see too much of him. He got injured a little bit. I think he took a minute to find his footing. But when he was on, he looked special. I really did like a majority of what I seen from him. Although, like I said, from most people, they say it was a little disappointing. SGA, I feel like we finally know what he is as a player. We want to see that three-point shooting continue to trend upward. But I mean, he's been 36% from three-point range. I think that's really good, especially for the fact that he's going to be driving to the basket quite a bit, in the lockdown defense that he brings on a night-to-night basis is phenomenal. But Lou Dort, to me, continues to be a question mark, because I get that he's your defensive guy. He's that person, that rock for you. But do you think there's any way that they have I feel he's the biggest trade asset if you're not giving away SGA. Dort will carry the biggest trade asset there, being that his contract isn't too crazy. He does bring a need that most teams want. Is there a deal in place, or do you think this is the roster? Once the draft is over, maybe they go out and sign low-end talent here or there, veterans that are looking for a contract that need to be on the bench to guide these young players? Or do you think there's a deal in place that could happen where Dort is possibly on the move, or another player's on the move, that brings back significant help to SGA so they can start making those steps and be ready for 2023, as you say, where they make the big move?
Yeah, I think that for Giddey, he had a fantastic rookie year. He swept the Western Conference Rookie of the Month awards up until he got hurt. And, of course, that's whenever Jalen Green won his one Rookie of the Month award for the Western Conference. If he can come back, he's working all offseason with Mike Wilkes, the Thunder assistant coach, on his jump shot. He's working on it. He's bringing Mike Wilkes to California, to Vegas, to Oklahoma City. He's working with Mike Wilkes all summer to get his jump shot right. If he can start to shoot league average from three, then he can be an excellent player because of his ability to create from the mid-range and his ability to create with that floater that he has at the rim. And if you give him a lob threat, then off that floater comes just unpredictability. Are you gonna lob it to the center? Are you gonna actually shoot the floater this time? What are you gonna do if you're Josh Giddey? So he has a lot of room to grow. I think he can be a Jason Kidd type of player if he can continue to develop throughout his entire career down the line. For SGA, he's an all-star caliber guy. His team just needs to win more games, and he's to stay healthy. That's all that has to happen for him to be an all-star caliber guy. Other than that, though, everything's kind of wide open. I think that with Lou Dort's contract situation, he's on an expiring deal. They're going to pick up his option. If they don't pick up his option, they're going to decline it, make him a restricted free agent, and then re-sign him. So either way, he's an OKC this next season. He's Shai's right-hand man. I mean, they're both Canadian. They're really good friends on and off the floor. I'm not sure that you'd trade Lou Dort, although I think that there's an option for that to happen if you do see yourself, picking an Ivy, right? Like how do you justify benching Lou Dort after all he's done, especially in a contract year, if you don't work out a long-term deal this offseason with him? And then, of course, with your second overall pick, or in this case, fourth overall pick, how would you bench Jaden Ivey, too, whenever you need to get as much reps as you can between him and Josh Giddey, if that were to happen? I think that there's a way to trade Lou Dort. I'm not sure that it would be for immediate help. I think that it would a package would kind of be like a future first or something like that, or even a first in this draft class coming up, whatever the case is with Lou Dort, because he only makes 1.9, so it's going to be hard to combine salaries. You can combine Derek Favors' salary, but at that point, does that hurt Lou Dort's value? Would you rather just re-sign Lou Dort, and if you want to trade him next year, or trade him at the trade deadline around then? So it'd be harder than it seems to work at a contract with Lou Dort. They already have 15 active players on their roster, although some of them would be easy to get rid of, like Teo Maledon's only making partial money. Isaiah Roby is on a team option. You have Vic Ritchie's only on partial money. Wiggins is on partial money. I think that they like those two guys. Then we'll keep those two guys around. Muscala, who's a veteran that's aging and is having ankle issues, is on a 3.5 club option that they can turn down. It's easy to get rid of Ty Jerome at $4 million. It's easy to get rid of Derek Favors, just outright cut him for $10 million. So there are ways to create roster spots, but as of right now, their roster is pretty full entering the draft. So I think that this will be the team, whoever they draft in the draft will be the team. They're not really going to go make a huge splash in the trade markets or in free agency, and they just kind of roll with it. I think that you could see, if Darius Bazley struggles again, you could see him getting moved as an expiring contract and just as a change of scenery to try to help his career at some point in season. But I really don't expect there to be too much roster turnover besides the draft class this year.
Very interesting. I'm very excited to see what some of these bottom end Western Conference teams do. Obviously, like the Kings, for example, they really want to become a play-in team. But you look at the top of the West, it's just going to get stronger and stronger. You figure the Blazers are going to take one more swing at building a team around Damian Lillard, so they're not going to be a bottom end team. The Nuggets are only going to get better. The Clippers are going to only get better once they get Paul George and Kawhi back, and then now they have Norman Powell to add to that. So I mean, if there was a year to sit and wait one more time, I think this is definitely it. This upcoming season, and you're right. I mean, cap flexibility heading into that next off season, where there's going to be a ton more free agents, better talent free agents, and arguably 100 times better NBA draft class than the one that we're seeing now. The Thunder are sitting in a very strong spot, and that's why I really believe that there was a potential idea that maybe, just maybe, Rylan, you were going to come on this show today, and you're going to be like, Vince, you know what? That trade package you presented to me, that's a Godfather offer. And you even have the hair, the look for it. You're like, you come to me on this podcast, you bring me this Godfather offer, you know what I say? Deal. Done. Now you got 2, now you got 4, you still got more cap flexibility. Tell me that doesn't intrigue you a little bit. Tell me that doesn't intrigue you a little bit.
It intrigues me a little bit. If it was 2K, I just think that the Thunder aren't going to do that this offseason. But if we had to compile all the fake SGA trades in the world, that would be the most realistic one. That would be the best one. So I'll give you credit there. But you're absolutely right. I think that next year, you look at the Western Conference, it's going to be easy to lose for a young team. I mean, we could talk about how great the Thunder young talent is, and it is great. We can talk about how great the draft class is going to be, and it will be great. But young teams don't win. And in the Western Conference, where you go up into the line and who's trying to lose in the West, maybe OKC and Houston, that's it. Everybody else is going to try to win. You think that San Antonio is going to try to tank and tops last year? Absolutely not. New Orleans is still going to be right back up there. The Lakers are still going to be trying to go for it. They might fail again, but they're going to be trying to go for it. Portland's not going to try to tank around Dame if he's healthy. Injuries will happen. Stuff will happen unpredictably that's going to happen in the league, but with everybody getting healthier and healthier, next year will be so easy to lose just because of how good the Western Conference is, especially for a young team. So I think that the Thunder are in a good spot here to get a really good first-round pick in 2023 and then truly go for it with 4 more years left to control over Shai.
Look into that crystal ball that's in front of you. That's called the microphone there, Rylan. You're looking into that crystal ball there. What player do you think they're targeting in 2023?
Yeah, 2023's draft class. Victor.
No, not the draft class. Not the draft class.
Not the draft class. Okay.
We're talking about free agents, or we're talking about players that you think are going to be on the block. Look in that microphone. Who are you saying? Because I'll name one right off the get. Karl Anthony Towns. That's going to be my name.
That would be very fun. I mean, the Thunder need a center. They need a big man. So if something happens in Minnesota and he doesn't like being second fiddle to Anthony Edwards, although he'd be second fiddle to SGA and OKC, so that might be a mishap there. I do have questions around him because of the whole playoff experience he had this season, but Cat would be a good name to watch for. I think that you can always find the next disgruntled guy. Is one more year in Utah, and then the trade demand comes out for Mitchell, and then you have this weird roster of Shai, Giddey, Mitchell, Chet, whoever, and then you're mind blown by that. Can you work that around? I think that in terms of adding a player in 2023, it won't necessarily be a free agent because it's very hard to convince a free agent to OKC. But I do think it will be a trade target of whoever is disgruntled at the time. If we did want to go with the free agent route, if Miles Turner is available, I know it's not a flashy name, but in this case scenario, you would hope that you've drafted A1 guy. You have Shai. You've drafted who you hope in Chet Jabari Paolo will be cornerstone guy. You're in a position to draft Victor Wembanyama, who you hope is a cornerstone guy, or Scoot Henderson, or whoever you draft in 2023, you hope is a cornerstone guy. You supplement those young players with Miles Turner. Even though it's not a flashy name, it still would be, I think, a very good roster.
That's a very intriguing roster, to say the least. Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder making his Kings Court debut. Thank you so much, Rylan, for joining the show, man. This was a lot of fun, very interesting conversation, hearing your thoughts not only on the Thunder, but as well as getting your perspective on the Kings and everything like that. Before I let you go, let the fans out there know where they can find you online and what they can be expecting from you heading into the NBA draft and obviously heading into next season.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on. This is a lot of fun. Love your work on Twitter and everything that we interact on there. You can find me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. We're going to have a draft dash from now until the draft every day, a podcast on Locked On Thunder, talking about the NBA draft, talking about the Thunder and everything else. So check us out over there, wherever you get your podcast from, and on YouTube, of course, just like your podcast here. And then thundersententions.com for articles and everything else on the Thunder. You can check that out as well. But thank you so much for having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Again, guys, go follow him on Twitter. Subscribe to the podcast Locked On Kings or Locked On Thunder, and be sure to check out all of his beat writing work there on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Because man, listen to he was talking about Cap. He's talking about Presti. Everything you guys need to know about the Thunder, Rylan had you guys covered. Again, you guys go give him a follow, and of course, subscribe to that podcast. I've been your host today. My name is Vince Miracle. You guys can follow me on all social media platforms of @VM_Center. Shout out to our sponsor, as you can see right above me on this shoulder. Bam, there it is. RateCrushers.com. If you guys need insurance, make sure you're not overpaying for any of your coverages. Go to RateCrushers.com and let them know here at the Kings Court sent you. Again, big shout out to the chat. You guys were amazing having you guys in there watching us live. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you guys are listening to the podcast version of this show, thank you guys so much for being podcast listeners. Continue to help us grow on iTunes by leaving us that rating. That definitely helps us. It helps me garner these sponsors that we have here and getting these guys like Rylan and Raphael and all the other guys to come and join on the show, because they look at the reviews like, oh, this guy's killing it, and that's why they come on. You know what I mean? So you guys, please do that there. And until next time, Sacramento Kings fans, peace. All right, buddy, I think we're